Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It has gone 6 o'clock, so we will make a start. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Cabinet. The evacuation procedure, I believe everyone in this room has actually heard the evacuation procedure at some point, so I don't propose to recite that word for word. If there is a fire, make your way to the nearest exit and follow everyone else is the best advice to give. We have item 2, which is apologies, and we have apologies from Councillor Richard Smith. Before I go on to the agenda, it's my sad duty to notify Cabinet that former Mayor and indeed Mayoress Diana Hawkes passed away this week, and I think it would only be fitting to actually say a few words for her because she was the first ever older woman of Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, and indeed she was the Millennium Mayor, which I don't think anyone will achieve in our lifetimes. It certainly won't come again. And together with her late husband, also a former mayor, they were a formidable team supporting Bedworth and the wider borough. And also her civic charity was the Air Ambulance, which I think is also fitting given that this year the current mayor's charity is the Air Ambulance. So I would just like to have a minute's silence, please, in memory of former councillor Alderwoman Hawkes. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Returning to the agenda, the next item is declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations beyond those already printed in the agenda? No. Okay. That moves us on to agenda item 4, which are the minutes of the last meeting. Is everyone happy that I sign those off as a true and accurate record of the meeting? Okay, thank you. Moves us on to agenda item number 5. I have been notified of public speaking by Mr. Smith on agenda items 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11. I don't intend on changing the order of business. That moves us on to agenda item number 6, which is transforming Nuneaton and transforming Bedworth governance arrangements, and that is my portfolio. So in introducing this report, I'll be as brief as I possibly can. One of the items which came out of the Local Government Association peer review is that one of the areas of improvement for this council is actually adopting a more professional project management approach to big ticket items. And over the past year, myself and Dawn Dawson, who is the appropriate portfolio holder, have been having discussions also with our counterparts at county and taken this through the respective member liaison boards. As you can see at paragraph 4.2, there is a revised structure which would unite both transforming Nuneaton and Bedworth at the top with a strategic board, which will then take its respective decisions to be made to each of the council's cabinets. We will also have, assuming that they are willing, and we have had indications of willingness, a technical panel of people who have expertise in particular fields who can feed into the strategic board. And then you will have the Transforming Nuneaton and Bedworth programme boards underneath, and each of the separate projects with their own board or team. So I am happy to move the recommendations from the chair. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Markham, thank you. That moves us on to public speaking, which is Mr. Smith.
Well, there's no real information in this, just we still have no account of what we're going to get for this 150 million you've had, where it's gone, what you've done with it. Just a load of legislation and company rules of how you lot are going to deal with it, but we've got no evidence of where it's gone. Nothing. Just a load of flowery promises that you fail constantly to deliver on any construction programme that this council's been involved in. We've got the bridge 3 times over the money, yeah? The hotel, 20 million. Everything you lot touch where construction is concerned turns to stone. It costs us more and more. You've had 150 million, we have to pay back with interest. Where's it gone? There's just no information in here. Nothing at all, just complete waste of time. Gone through this time and time again with you lot. Everything you do, it's just going over. Now we've got another hour of scripted stuff, yeah, but there's no information. No information. What have you provided for 150 million quid? Nothing. I see nothing. Bar pictures. It's just shocking, shocking. You really need to be transparent, is it you call it, and in reality, yeah?
Thank you. Any points of clarification? Councillor Golby, was that an indication?
So the report is a decision-making structure. The report is entitled Decision-Making Structure, and it has the decision-making structure in it to be agreed. Do you understand that it's not a project document? It's actually a document documenting the decision-making structure as per the report title.
Would you like to come back on that, Mr. Smith?
What we'd like to know is a little bit of transparency from this council, yeah? There's none. Pipe dreams that could cost us a lot more money, yeah? Because ultimately, it's a taxpayer that pays, yeah? This government money is public money, yeah? All public money, all £150 million of it, public money, yeah? Disappeared. No evidence has been used on anything.
Councillor Gutteridge, a point of clarification.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out to Mr. Smith, I ran the mountain bike track, tennis courts and netball courts in Bedworth in the Miners' Welfare Park. And I'm very proud of that because we were under budget by a couple of thousand and we were on time. And I think that's a credit to the staff that we've got here.
I think that's more a statement than a point of clarification, but I think it's well made. I do have a question, Mr. Smith. You have said you've got no evidence of where the money has gone, so where are you saying the money has gone to? Where are you saying the money has gone, Mr. Smith? That's not what you've made in previous statements, Mr. Smith, but we'll leave it there.
Just bring the accounts in, just show us where that money has gone.
The statement
That's
of
all we're
accounts is,
asking.
Mr. Smith, the statement of
It's our
accounts is
money.
available for you to read. I'm not going to take that any, I was ending public speaking. I'll bring you in a minute, Councillor Condacor. So we'll move now on to non-cabinet members. Councillor Condacor.
As the leader of an opposition group, It's really disappointing there isn't a place for opposition groups on this structure, or the scrutiny committees. We can ask you when you come to scrutiny questions, but we do not, as part of the structure, have any oversight in terms of what's going on with transforming Nuneaton and transforming Bedworth. Both projects are going to get radically changed as we have to do value engineering, and some of the better bits of the projects may be cut out, and there's absolutely no transparency as far as the opposition group is concerned in terms of what's going on until it goes to planning, if it needs planning. We really have a massive issue with things going forward without proper business cases, and I hope and see that that's starting to get addressed. The hotel went ahead, it seems, on the business case, which was pre-COVID, and there is a serious lack of oversight, and that even a critical friend to say, are you sure, can you make it smaller? Yeah, there is just total control of one party over all the places on the members' liaison groups, and there is not even an observer status in this structure to make sure that we can actually, myself and the leader of the Labour group, keep an eye on what's going on. And when we have these projects, it's been mentioned £20 million hotel, we're not sure the cost of the hotel is 20 million because we don't get these feedback. We get little bits on a capital programme in year, but obviously the 20 million may include some bits that aren't the hotel but actually prep work for the other stuff, or actually the 20 million may miss out some bits that have either been done in previous years or be done in later years. So there is a serious issue here about oversight, and I think the opposition groups do need to have a way of looking at progress. And what's been going on in Bedworth, when we did get some notes out of the Transforming Bedworth thing, was very, very untransparent and very unsatisfactory. One thing I would suggest when these meetings happen, if you are having them without an oversight and an observer, is actually just a short note. Quite often the county have confidential meetings, but they do put out two sentences or something just to say what's happened or what's progressed. But at the moment we get nothing. We don't even know when these meetings happen to even ask you what's going on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. I think it is incorrect to say there is no opposition representation. There is an opposition member on the Transforming Nuneaton panel, although from memory I don't think he's attended the last couple or even sent a substitute to that. But that may be something he wishes to address with his fellow leader of the opposition. As for Bedworth, there are no Green members or Labour members in Bedworth. Therefore, we don't think it is appropriate for them to have a say on somewhere they do not live. And as for overview and scrutiny, there is an opportunity for overview and scrutiny. In fact, Councillor Condacor knows that Bedworth is going to the meeting tomorrow night, which I have already spoken to the chair of the overview and scrutiny about, and said that before now I gave an undertaking that I would go there, and I am meeting my undertaking to go there, as Councillor Condacor well knows. In terms of the project board, this is about delivery. This isn't about overview and scrutiny. This is about delivering on the ground. Something which Councillor Condacor makes great play about, but when we try and tighten up the project management process, he then criticises it. You can't have your cake and eat it, Councillor Condacor. It is one or the other. So I'm happy to see whether any other member has any comments on the proposals. No, in which case we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. That is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to agenda item number 6, which is the draft revenue budget. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I shall move the report as it stands in the agenda. This is the report that fires the starting gun, really, on our process for budget 2023-24 that we'll be introducing formally in February. This is our base position. This is what we have to address as an organisation. It's later than we'd have liked to have brought it to Cabinet, and I have explained on several occasions and apologised for the issues we've been having in the Finance Department, but our new 151 officer and our interim head of finance have been doing a splendid job getting the team restructured and getting the processes reformed to get the place into shape. The headline figure in this report is that the general fund is, on current projections, estimated to be in a deficit of £2.5 million, and actually the £2.5 million is in the addendum that we've released earlier this week, and the housing revenue account will be over by £2.6 million. This must be closed by law as part of our budget process, otherwise the council suffers what's known as a Section 114 notice, and we do not want that. I think it is something of an understatement to say, Mr. Chairman. We have this deficit is representative of the very serious economic situation that the country and the borough is facing. We are in a very severe inflationary situation, and you'll see that on the capital programme as well. This year we've already had to face a pay award which of sort of over £500,000, which we hadn't been able to predict at the start of the year. The days of 1 or 2% pay awards are very much over in a situation of 10% inflation. We've had to increase insurance costs going out to retender. We've had a decline. The economic troubles have led to a decline in income because through a decline in footfall. And I think the figure that might startle the most in this in these reports is the utilities figure, with £1.9 million estimated worth of electricity costs. And we had the cheery news earlier this week that it was going to be £600,000 higher than even our not very conservative estimate of the increase in costs for next year in the draft budget earlier this week, split between the general fund and the HRA. So that is the challenge that we face, and we will be bringing our solutions to the problem that the council faces in the February Budget Cabinet and the February Budget Council. We will be introducing a very stringent savings programme, and we've already taken steps within the administration to that effect. We are reviewing all of our expenditures. We are reviewing all of our income, and we are, of course, as has often been suggested, reviewing our capital programme. I've spoken several times about the need for the organisation to transform, and this crisis, if that's not too strong a word, demonstrates the absolutely imperative need for that we need to completely review our functions as an organisation and retrench back into our core business, what we actually have to do. That will, as I may, it will involve some very painful but necessary decisions as part of this process. But more than that, we don't just need to look at providing savings and looking at what we do. We also need to look at how we do things. And this is much more difficult to do, but it's absolutely essential because the public realm sometimes, as you know, Mr. Chairman, has a reputation for not being the most efficient organisation. So what we really need to do, and this is the most difficult part, is really take apart our processes, take apart the way we work and the way we achieve our ends, and make them leaner, make them more efficient. It's called productivity, and it's a very hard thing to achieve, but we have to do it to get more for less as part of this process. So that is the challenge that we face, and it is the challenge we are going to meet, and it is also the challenge for the opposition groups who have called on several occasions for us to increase spending. We've had a huge controversy, I think it is not unfair of me to say, Mr. Chairman, over our recent decision on the Civic Hall. Without that decision, this deficit would have been considerably higher. The opposition have opposed that decision, so the challenge for them is how they would make good on that promise and that suggestion in the February process, because we know that our priorities have to be supporting the residents on things like sanitation and homelessness and cleanliness and how...
Again, very little relevant information, just guesswork at best, and speculative financial dealings in the hope that you can extract more money for giving less services. That's all you seem to be interested in, getting more public money off the already struggling public of this area, yeah, to give them less services. That's what we're getting all the time. Your excuses to fund your lifestyles, yeah? because not many of you have a job outside of a government job. Yeah? It's constant, it's speculative. It reminds me of the casino banking and financial tools used in the early 2000s by the dot-com and casino bankers that bankrupted all the banks. This council needs to prove its solvency. Yeah? If you see very little evidence of that, it's all speculation and extraction. You're just looking at getting more money out of the public next year. It's as bad as Westminster, this lot. You know what I mean? And they're being investigated for what they did with a lot of money, for very good reasons. It's about time there was some public accountability for what your corporations do with our money, that you demand from us and criminalise us for not paying. So it's about time there was some transparency. Yeah? No more making letters up, eh?
Mr. Smith, you said that we were doing this to fund our lifestyles as councillors. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that, please? You said in your statement that we are using public funds, i.e. council money, to fund our lifestyles. Can you explain what you mean by that, please?
None of you seem that worried about the cost of living going up, yeah? I haven't heard you raise any concerns about that in your in your next year's budget, yeah? Where you want to extract more money to pay for less services.
So are you accusing... Mr. Smith, I think we need to be very clear on this. Are you accusing us as councillors of defrauding this council of money? That is the conclusion of your statement. And what business is it of yours if we have jobs or not? Although we do, actually. Do you have a job, Mr. Smith? Well, when you get one, please let us know, and then you'll know what it's like in the world of work. Thank you very much. Any other points of clarification? Councillor Golby.
I'd like Mr. Smith to clarify whether he's actually been into the council finance department and actually spoke to any of our finance team about what's going on within the council. And are you a qualified accountant?
Can we see NAV cells?
That's not actually what I asked. Can you answer the question that I've asked you?
You said the finance team, yeah? You've only just put it together.
So what I asked was, have you been into this council with the finance team and gone through the accounts and are you a qualified accountant? You're making some very, very, very big suggestions about finances of this council, and I want to know if you've been in and actually been in with the finance team in this council, and are you a qualified accountant?
No, I'm not a qualified accountant, and as you know, we're not allowed to come in and look at the accounts. Don't need to be a qualified accountant, yeah? What do you lot know about construction?
So I'd like to come back on that.
Councillor Golby.
Are you aware that all of the council's finances are publicly available documentation? It's all publicly available. We have a budget book every year. The finances are produced and public and put into the public domain every year. And yet the accusation, and it was a very muted accusation, was something very different. So to say that we don't actually have transparency on the finances, we do. I would just add to the question that Whether you accept that or not is the point here. So do you accept that this council's finances are publicly available through public available documentation?
Not all of them, no. NABCEL.
So, my final question will be, how do you know that if you haven't been into the council and spoken to the finance teams and you haven't looked at the finances that are publicly available? How do you know that?
I came to the NABCEL meeting, yeah, for an update. Was thrown out.
No, I'm talking about the council's finances, not NABCEL. This is not anything to do with NABCEL. I'm talking about the claims you've just made about this council's finances. And I am asking you categorically, how do you know what you are saying is correct if you have not been into this council and you have not reviewed all of the publicly available financial documentation for this council and you are not a qualified accountant?
You're not allowed in here. We're allowed in with help, usually, but we're still under COVID, aren't we? Yes. It says that on your website. That it's on the website, you cannot come in and view it.
You can come into the council by appointment. There is a difference. And also, to answer your point about NABCEL, the NABCEL's accounts are published on Companies House as they are required to be by law. Any other points of clarification to Mr. Smith? No, in which case I'll move to any non-cabinet members. I saw Councillor Baxter Payne first. Did you also? Yeah, okay. Councillor Baxter Payne, you indicated.
I just wanted to mention to Mr. Smith that not all of the council have no knowledge of construction.
And indeed you have a job, don't you, Councillor Baxter Payne? Councillor Condacor.
Thank you very much, Chair. The most alarming thing is this idea we're going to have efficiency savings and cuts, when the one thing we really do need to do is actually be more efficient in terms of how we use stuff. And one of the crying shames is this £1.9 million estimated electricity bill. Walking around the housing stock in my patch, I see all the landlord lighting, the archaic lighting fixtures that are using vast amounts of energy. I see this council chamber with these old gloomy lights. In the opposition room, we had the heating turned on full, and I've probably been the only person in there this week. There is lots of opportunity to... Thank you, Councillor Golby. Snide remarks not required when I'm speaking. We fundamentally can do an awful lot to reduce our energy use. So I hope rather than just focus on cutting staff and focusing on cutting public services, we try and green this council up. So actually, it won't have a £1.9 million electricity bill. It won't have such a high gas bill. And actually, it's later in the agenda, we won't waste so much money on diesel for all our vans because we can start to electrify. We really need to tackle energy use and become more efficient. And every year, I keep asking this council to install solar on some of its buildings. Yeah, there is a massive opportunity for some of this £1.9 million utility cost actually to be electricity we're making at far less cost. So I do hope Councillor Croft will take that request to employ someone as an energy efficiency person out of this 1.9 million and actually get the 1.9 million down to 1.5 million. Yeah, it's so bad just wasting electricity, wasting heating and not having an efficient green council. There's lots of other things I could pick up on here. It is really, really important that we accept we've got an inflation crisis. But it's also important to know a lot of this is self-inflicted by 12 years of Conservative government that is now coming back to bite us. And we're doing so many vanity projects. There's this hotel we're building, and that will make a loss during the first few years. That surely is part of our £2.5 million deficit. Just funding the interest and the start-up costs that are revenue costs in the early years until it gets the momentum to hopefully cover its own costs. So I do hope we get more information in your medium-term financial plan to show where all the vanity projects are actually adding to our cost pressures. Thank you.
Councillor Condacor, as a point of clarification, you mentioned about putting additional green technology into various parts of the council's estate. Are you aware that those will be capital projects?
Yes, I am aware there'll be capital projects, and the payback on the electricity cost we're expecting will be only a couple of years, and we are spending lots of capital money on really vanity projects, so invest to save is a very sensible thing to do.
So can I ask, you've said that you would be happy to spend capital money on that, but then you have told us at Cabinet on numerous occasions not to take out any additional borrowing. So would you have us borrow more money to fund your vanity projects on green technology, which aren't all yet proven?
And a good example is landlord lighting. If you borrowed £500,000 to get all our housing revenue stock lighting to be efficient, the interest rate on £500,000 will be 50,000 or 25,000 a year, and we save more than that on the electricity. So you have to do capital projects that actually more than cover the cost of the interest of the capital. But the landlord lighting is a classic example where we've got far too much electricity waste. Christmas lights, we don't ever seem to have them on time switches. They're absolutely beautiful, but why are they on at 4 in the morning? There's lots of things where just in certain time switches, sorting out our estate would actually save us so much money that actually it would give us a return that would more than cover the interest rate. Thank you.
So the answer is yes, you want us to take on more borrowing despite your previous protestations at Cabinet?
No, I want you to borrow and spend it more wisely.
I think that's a yes. Any other points of clarification? Point of clarification or debate? Councillor Golby.
You've mentioned the landlord lighting in the HRA. How do you know that we're not already looking at that?
I suspect you are already looking at it, but you've got a multi-year rollout. Nothing much has changed recently, and it is I hope we can agree that landlord lighting is an easy, quick win, which is why your work on landlord lighting needs to be directed to Councillor Croft's forecast, so we get the 1.9 million down.
Okay. If that's all the points of clarification, is there anything that anyone wants to come back on? No, in which case we will move to the recommendations as printed. All those in favour, please show. Okay, thank you very much. That moves us on to agenda item number 8, which is the approval of the infrastructure funding statement. In Councillor Smith's absence, I will move the report and recommendations as printed. In doing so, we have a requirement from government to provide a statement every year about the income and the expenditure of Section 106 and community infrastructure levy funding that this council receives. This is the statement for 21-22 financial year. It shows the cash value that we've had and also the non-cashable values that we have had and where they have been spent. It's important to note as well that this is only 106 contributions because we do not have at present any community infrastructure levy arrangements, because Cabinet last year, I believe, took a decision that based on the information available, we would not get as much out of the SIL as we currently do on 106, and we believe that actually getting money for the infrastructure investment that we so desperately need within our borough is of high importance. So it is a statement we have to provide. It is there on the website for everyone to read and see, and I move the recommendations as printed. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Gutteridge, thank you. We move on to public speaking on this item, which is Mr. Smith. Sorry, item 8, which is the infrastructure funding statement.
Yeah, infrastructure, yeah. The infrastructure fund, yeah, like I say, it's online. I'll have to go back and have a good read of it. But from what I can gather, it's, like I say, just more hoovering up of trying to charge people more for less. The infrastructure side of it, the social housing side of this council's stock leaves a lot to be desired. What you're accepting off the builders around here as social housing, I don't know how that quite works, but that social housing is supposed to be of a certain standard. Most of it that's been accepted will be uninhabitable within 10 years. Shocking state of affairs. The houses are terrible. What spec they're built to, I don't know, but I know that we have a number of accounts of housing stock that's supposedly social housing. The spec on it is shocking. They would be uninhabitable in 10 years. Where's the sustainability in that? Makes no sense. You don't seem to have any idea of construction at all. You just, the builder said it's okay. Go and look at what you're getting for the money. Yeah, they're providing this as a social housing. The social housing stock is shocking. Absolutely shocking. It'll be uninhabitable in 10 years. That really can't say too much about it. I haven't had time to read it all. Don't get the time you lot do.
Mrs. Smith, as a point of clarification, you said that this is effectively taking more for less from residents of the borough. As I said in my opening statement, this is what we get from developers. They are not residents of this borough. Are you aware that this is money we get from developers and is not incurred by residents of this borough?
They get it back by cutting corners.
Oh, we've heard a supposed expert in accountancy and construction now, but Councillor Golby.
Where are you drawing your conclusions from on the state of social housing? Where are you drawing your conclusions from on the state of social housing, particularly the new builds, because they are actually built to a extremely high standard for social housing, and the broad brush comments that you make about every social housing build that we've done, which is what your statement says, is going to be uninhabitable in 10 years. I'm just baffled by the fact that you are able to, with certainty, make that kind of statement publicly, and I would like to know where you're getting your information from on that.
I know a lot of people that live in them. Are you a builder?
I'm portfolio holder for housing and communities, and I do actually visit the builds that we put out, and they are built to an extremely high standard. The new builds that we've built recently, more so than previously when I took over. So no, I'm not a builder, but I do have a job, funnily enough, and I was criticised roundly recently for my job actually taking me away, and I believe you were one of the people criticising me for that. So no, I'm not a builder. However, I did work for a major construction company for 15 years. So I do have some knowledge about construction in that respect, yes.
I'm going to draw a line under this because this isn't actually the subject of the report. Construction or otherwise and standards of the housing may be a fascinating topic of discussion, but it isn't actually covering the item of the section 106 income and expenditure and spending. So I'm going to draw a line under that because it, as fascinating as it is, and although Councillor Golby may get her own T-shirt out of it, it's not really worth going because I don't think you'll get anywhere, unfortunately. Any non-cabinet member? Councillor Condacor.
Chair, it's very useful the government insisting we produce these reports, but every year it shows we're getting section 106 money in and not spending it, and particularly on pages 21 and 22 of the agenda, appendix, whatever you call it, it's got tables of all this outstanding money we've not spent yet. And it's really appalling, particularly we've got money in from development in Wellington for footpaths and things like that. And it's just sitting there unspent. And our residents have suffered an awful lot in Wellington. A lot of the footpaths across Sandon Park are really deteriorating in the weather and the use. And we'd really like some of that money spent on what we actually got it from developers for. And also on there, there's the affordable housing. We seem to have about £3 million sitting there of contributions toward affordable housing that is not being spent at a time when we've got such a need for affordable housing. So I do ask we actually have a delivery plan. I believe we had an officer appointed to get some of this stuff moving. I don't know what's going on with that. But we really need to get this Section 106 money spent and not just sat in the bank account. And as a technical note, can I please ask we put commas in the thousands? Because these numbers, particularly the large ones, are very hard to read, whether it's 3 million or 30 million. So in this appendix, we've got large numbers without any commas between separating the thousands. So page 21, 22 are hard to read because of that. But so if we can really answer why we aren't spending this money. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condicourt. I don't think it is fair to say that we aren't spending this money and it is just sitting there. In fact, I've had this question from him before at full council. There is money that is accumulating and we wait until we reach the threshold before we spend it so that we can do all the work at one time rather than having continuous disruption for residents. A case in point is Buttermere Park, as he well knows, as he has raised that topic before, and we have had to wait for the money to come in dribs and drabs from the developer because of the trigger points as part of the legal agreements and 106 agreements, and it wasn't at a point where we could do all the work at one time. So we have now, or are about to reach fairly soon, that critical mass, if you like, of funding so that we can actually go and do all the works necessary to Buttermere Park with as least disruption as possible, which is also more cost efficient because we aren't paying for someone to go out 2, 3, 4, 5 times for mini projects. We're doing one big project once and getting it right first time. And I know that Councillor Guttridge has been leading on that, and that he is pushing our Section 151, our Section 106, although it is the Section 151 officer we're pushing as well to make sure the money is spent, but the Section 106 officer that he has in his department is very acutely aware of that too. So it is unfair and misleading to say we are just sitting on pots of money. That is giving a misleading impression to residents. Actually, no, you've had your say, Councillor Condicourt. It's unfair to mislead residents to say we're just sitting on pots of money when there's a very good reason. We want to reduce their disruption and also get the most bang for their buck, especially when inflationary costs are going up, as he has already identified. Any other Cabinet member wish to come in? No? Okay. We have the recommendations as printed. All those in favour, please show. That is passed. Thank you very much. That moves us on to agenda item number 9, which is property developer wheeled bin and cost adoption update. Councillor Markham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This report seeks approval to update on the previous Cabinet decision on the 5th of July 2019, requiring property developers to provide wheeled bins and inserts for all new and converted development schemes within the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council area. Many local authorities now charge developers for the supply and delivery of bins for waste and recycling, or require developers to provide receptacles for new housing. With the current pressures on local authority budgets, it is considered prudent to follow this route and recover all costs for this service. Our council currently doesn't collect any charges or contributions for waste containers for new developments under 10 dwellings. This report recommends that the policy is updated and that charges are requested for all such new developments, and this will bring us in line with the other authorities. In connection with setting the charges for the supply of these waste containers, there will be a set at a cost plus basis to reflect the cost of procuring, delivering and administration charges. Clearly, we would need to ensure that any containers purchased by developers are of an acceptable standard and are right for the property being developed. We will provide developers with the option to purchase the containers directly from the council, which will ensure a consistent quality. Through these amendments, our aim is to ensure that developers consider making adequate provision to accommodate waste and recycling containers and our collection vehicles when designing their properties. We also wish to ensure that the council is consulted before residents are informed of their collection arrangements. We will also endeavour, as part of this update, through varying communication channels, to make it clear to residents under what circumstances we will replace wheeled bins and the residents' responsibility to look after their bin and keep it safe to reduce the chance of it being misused, lost or stolen. The green bin is not part of this report, as this is a choice by residents to take part in this collection scheme, and a set charge is already in place for this service. So I move the recommendations as printed 1 to 3, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Markham. Does that receive a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Gutteridge. Mr. Smith, you've said that you want to speak on this item.
Just like to congratulate the residents of the area and all the good people trying to keep it open, despite this corporation's determination to close anything that's of a public value. Thank you. Great work.
I don't understand the statement, but you've made it, so we'll move on. Any non-cabinet member? Councillor Condacor.
Thank you. I think it would be useful to identify how much we collect through the scheme at the moment for houses over 10 dwellings, because that's a useful piece of information to put some context on it. I think these prices need to have some RPI clause added, because if we don't do that with the price of plastic going up, which is obviously linked to the price of oil, we could easily be undercharging by 10 or 20% very quickly. And we also need to future-proof it for, hopefully maybe next year, for us getting the MRF and changing this thing so we don't have caddies. Does that mean we're going to have to revisit this, and do we need to put something in for that? Because if we agree this with developers and it takes 5 years to build out, how does that work if after 2 years we've changed and we don't need caddies anymore? So I think those couple of points need clarifying. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Condacor. Do you want to take that, or do you want me to? Okay. The answer about how much we are collecting is quite simple, Councillor Condacor, and was quite shocking to Cabinet, actually, that despite there being a policy, Labour never implemented it. So we discovered that they weren't charging, and that is why this report is being brought to Cabinet to do that, because we believe that if the developers are making significant profits out of the developments in Nuneaton and Bedworth, which I think Councillor Condacor and I would actually agree on, given the level of development, particularly in St Nicholas and Weddington, that we don't feel it is fair for them to place the burden of providing these bins on the taxpayer. They should bear that burden. But since we have discovered this omission, we have given a clear directive to officers that it should be implemented, and indeed bills have already gone out to developers, and we are looking at where we can retrospectively trying to recover the funding, because the policy was in place. And we believe likewise with properties between 1 and 9 dwellings that whoever brings those forward will actually incur a profit. They would not do it otherwise, and the same principle applies, that we believe that it should be them who bears the burden of providing this extra service to begin with, and not the taxpayers of this borough. As Councillor Markham identified in her opening statement, there is a clause in there about uprating the cost of bins in line with a cost plus basis. As we actually did discuss it as a Cabinet, we are aware, as Councillor Condacor says, that with the price of oil fluctuating at the moment, although usually going up and not down, that is a risk to us. So those are the reasons why we have had this report brought to us, because, again, Councillor Croft has highlighted the scale of the financial challenge, but also we believe it is fair and equitable for the residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth. I hope that answers the questions that Councillor Condacor raised. Caddies. Sorry, I forgot about the caddies. The basic design would be that once we go to the MRF with the lorries as they are, all we would have to do is remove the caddy, and it would still tip into the commingled lorry, and that would actually reduce our overheads long term with the MRF as well. That is the idea, unless officers wish to correct me. I think that's all the questions now, Councillor Condacall. Any member of Cabinet? No? Okay, in which case we'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, that is carried. Agenda item number 10, Kersley Community Centre. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. This one's the community centre. And it's actually 12 months since we first made the announcement that we wanted to transfer, not close, transfer the community centres in Stockingford and Kersley over to the communities themselves, because we do believe that those communities know best how to manage their own assets. And also, of course, because that is, as I've already outlined, we do have a financial challenge and the council needs to retrench. There's been a great deal of interest since our report in September in Kersley Community Centre. We've already settled the issue of Stockingford Community Centre. The committee's taking it over. And there's been a huge amount of work, a wonderful amount of work from our director, Deputy Chief Executive Tom Shardlow, and a great deal of support from the ward members, Councillor Brown and Councillor Downs. And because we've had such interest, we are now in a position to move into the final stage. It's not hugely appropriate, this is partly why the report is so brief, to go into details of bids from individual organisations. But what this report does is it gives authority to the Deputy Chief Executive and myself to go back to the top we've scored them, you can see in the report, go back to the top 3 scoring organisations, settle the final issues that are to be determined, and then make the transfer. We envisage that the lease will be handed over on the 1st of April next year. As promised last December, we were making available £55,000 of capital works so that we're not cutting and running. The building will be left in good shape, and we'll also be looking to make sure that provision is made for the football clubs and the existing groups who use the centre. So I will move the report as written, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Croft. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Markham, thank you. Mr. Smith, you've indicated that you wish to speak on this item.
Item 10, yeah?
Item 10, Kersley.
Yeah, I haven't got an awful lot to say about that, but obviously just more grasping from this organisation. At the moment, we're in a bit of a cost of living crisis, and everything seems to be geared towards getting more money from the public. Everything. There's no help at all, really. I haven't got a lot to say about that one. The next one's what I want to speak on, really. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't think there's anything of substance there for Cabinet to address. Non-Cabinet members, Councillor Condacall.
It's very welcome the groups are now so interested and we're actually making progress. One question is to 55,000, because that's obviously a very useful way of getting things into a fit state. And why isn't a similar amount being offered for the Civic Hall, which obviously would need a bigger amount, but proportionally similar, because that would help the people trying to bid for that. And the other thing is, of course, this building will use electric, utilities, gas, so they will transfer, I assume, to the new owners. So that will actually be a tiny bit off our 1.9 million, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Condacall. Councillor Croft, you wish to come back?
Very briefly, it's implicit in the comment that you make the difference in the size of the asset, and yes is the answer to your second point.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Any Cabinet member have anything further to say on this? Councillor Golby.
I'm just quite pleased that we are able to bring this forward currently. And it just shows when we faced the absolute criticism that we did face, that actually we were quite right in taking the action that we took, and the communities have stepped forward on both the community centres. We never intended to close them. We always intended for this to be the outcome, and I'm pleased that actually it's happened. So I wonder if all those people who said those things about us in public and private, that they will now like to withdraw the comments that were made.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. I share your sentiments, although I won't be holding my breath on the last point, but I think it's a point well made. So we'll move to the recommendations. All those in favour, please show. Okay, thank you. That is carried. That moves us on to the Strategic Performance Report, which is item 11. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's the usual report we get every quarter. I shall highlight a couple of positive things. One of them, because Matt is actually in the room, AP are paying 96% of invoices to terms, which is absolutely fantastic. I've spent several years paying bills, and we never get anywhere near 96% in my profession. And we are doing reasonably well on monitoring, health and safety monitoring. There are areas for improvement, and I will just highlight that this report does show the scale of the financial challenge we face, not just next year, in next year's budget, but within this year as well. And it does illustrate the impact that inflation, but also the pay award and the staffing issues to which we have oft referred, Mr. Chairman, are having on our budget bottom line through interims. So I shall move the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Croft. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Gutteridge, thank you. Mr. Smith, you've indicated that you wish to speak on this. It's item 11.
Also, the finance could be a lot more transparent. From the people service delivery side of it, there's not a lot of. I'm not getting a lot of feedback where anyone feels satisfied with the services they're getting from this council. The housing department in particular, there's lots of complaints. Bullying in the hostels. I've had at least 10 people today come to me with problems with the housing department in the hostels for the homeless. A lot of people are feeling very threatened in them. Now that's down to this council. Yeah, the processes. We can't get in to see the council. Yeah. It's still appointment only, too much online, yeah? And like I say, the financial side of it is a lot of speculation, a hell of a lot of speculation, what perhaps may be, yeah? Depending on what your corporation does with the country in the next few months, yeah? Whether we go completely pear-shaped or not, yeah? So, that's about all I've got to say. Like I say, there's been a lot of complaints just lately. Like I say, it's failing on all its supposed performance figures. It's not supplying us with any real information, yeah? And I don't get any real feel that this council wants to change things. You're just excusing yourselves constantly, yeah? And this, like I say, the finance side of it, is not transparent at all. Whatever you say, Chris, it isn't transparent. It's hard work. We can't see if we're getting any value.
Mr. Smith, you're not sticking to the actual topic. Any points of clarification from Mr. Smith? Councillor Golby. Did you want to come in?
So you've mentioned housing. Can you hear me okay? I've got kids, mate. You're not a patch on them. You've mentioned housing. You've mentioned people complaining to you about housing. Why are they complaining to you and not my housing teams? And can you quantify and evidence what you have said so I can get my housing teams to get in touch with these people and resolve their issues?
They're homeless, they're vulnerable, yeah? Obviously your team's not very approachable. Like this council, not very approachable. And I'll say there's been a few complaints of bullying, you know what I mean? So, you need to get in there and sort it out. I'm giving you the opportunity, Claire. This is what I've been told, yeah? There is an issue, they're feeling intimidated. Yeah, certainly the homeless in the old council house and the other Nabkel and P3 buildings. There seems to be a lot of bullying and intimidation. That's the feedback I'm giving you. Yeah, like I say, the finance side of it is, but there's a lot of people feeling intimidated. Yeah, I'm already having to deal with one guy. Yeah, I'm representing to your housing team. All right, okay.
I would suggest that this gentleman that you're speaking to gets more professional advice than what you're able to provide. Councillor Golby.
I need you to quantify this because you are banding around some very serious accusations. So my takeaway from what you've just said is that there is bullying going on in our temporary accommodations, that you have said my staff are not dealing with that, which I absolutely take exception to. But I now want you to quantify and qualify what you are saying, because you are really, really kind of treading into dangerous territory. And also, unless you have power of attorney or you are a legal representative, you cannot represent anybody in any capacity, because officers legally cannot deal with you as a third party unless you are legally responsible for the person you are representing. So let me make that absolutely clear. Legally, they cannot do that. Legally, they cannot actually disclose some things to me as the portfolio holder of people who are in our temporary accommodation, because I have no right to access certain parts of that information. Neither do you. Now, I am being very, very, very patient with this because I know that my housing teams put a lot of effort and a lot of work into turning around the system that we operate within. And you now need to start putting your money where your mouth is and presenting evidence to all of these things that you are saying. Otherwise, I'm going to have to take them as being absolute fantasy and unquantifiable, unevidenced nonsense. If they are not nonsense, I will absolutely 100% deal with them. But I need you now to quantify, qualify, and evidence everything you have just said. Otherwise, we are treading into some very, very dangerous territory with the accusations you've just made.
That's what I have been told by numerous people, Claire. I'm giving you that information so that you, as the portfolio holder, can go to visit these places and have a look yourself. Obviously, if these people are lying to me, then fine. You know what I mean? But I don't feel they are. And obviously, they find it difficult to complain about the people who are housing them at the moment. It's a difficult one for everyone. Maybe you should be more open and accessible and actually give the impression that you care. That's all I'm asking.
Okay, Councillor Golby.
Have you been into any of our temporary accommodations? No, have you been into any of our temporary accommodations? Have you been into any of our temporary accommodations?
Can you use the microphone, please, Mr. Smith?
No, but the people from it come and speak to me.
Again, you are introducing fantasy and passing it off as objective truth. Have you got the evidence? Have you got the details of these people who are supposedly in our temporary accommodation, who are being bullied, who are claimed of all of these things going on? Have you got that information that you can give to me so I can instigate and start an investigation. Because if you don't, I would suspect, and I will say this now, these people are phantoms being created to substantiate a narrative that you want to push. Now, you being sat in the town centre makes absolutely no difference, because anybody could walk up to you and say, I live in such and such a place and it's bloody awful. You have no evidence whatsoever that that is correct. And if you do, you need to give that to me so I can start something and investigate everything that you're saying, because I will not let this go now. You need to start substantiating your claims when you're making serious accusations of the likes of what you have just done. We can all ignore the council taxes, fraud, yellow signs, because that's just a joke. But what you have said is an extremely serious allegation that you have just made in public, and I am going to pursue that, and I am going to pursue you for all the evidence and all the details. And if you can't give it to me, there will probably be some consequences for that, which I'm going to have to take some legal advice, because it's not on that you come into this council and you throw around accusations like that about my staff.
I'm giving you the information to give you the opportunity to do something about it, like with all the information I'll give you. I'm a member of the public, Claire, yeah? We don't have a voice. This is the only time in a long time any council has been given the public's view of things. When do you ever get the public's view of things? Ever.
Last time, through the chair, one last time, I need you to clarify and provide me evidence of the claims that you have just made of those natures. You have not told me anything other than some bloke or some woman has just walked up to you in the town centre and said something. And you've come in here and you've made a very, very serious accusation. And it is a very serious accusation. And I want you to evidence the accusation, either evidence it so I can deal with it, or publicly rescind it and admit that actually you're not correct. Because, again, it's an extremely serious accusation that you've just made. And you've sat there, and we'll go over the video later, and the things that you've just said will get noted and will get dealt with. But you haven't told me anything other than, you've not told me anything that's actionable, other than you've made a very serious accusation about the staff in our temporary accommodation. And I will not accept that. I absolutely will not accept that without you giving me the details of who these people are that are coming to see you, so I and my staff can deal with that and speak to them directly. Either that or they can get in touch with my staff. Absolutely, if that happens, it will get dealt with. But I will not have you sitting in here banding about your fantasy about things going on in this council when you're actually directing serious accusations at my staff, who are individuals. We're all here to take a bit of a knock. We know that. It goes with the territory. But I will not have you saying that about my staff, who you say they're not approachable and they're overseeing areas that are subject to bullying and nasty behaviour. That is not on. Absolutely not on. So either you put your money where your mouth is, like I've said, you provide me with the details of these people and their accusations, and I will deal with that, or you retract what you've just said.
I'll do that when Mrs. Iceland comes in, yeah? Right?
Hang on.
Yeah.
Mr. Smith, what you have said, if I take at face value, is a potential safeguarding issue. That has very, very significant consequences. That means there are potentially vulnerable children and adults out there who need help. If I take what you say at face value, I think you now have a duty as a citizen to provide that information so that those people can get the necessary help and support and, if necessary, protection that they need. It is a safeguarding issue, which I take very seriously, and I know that all my cabinet do and all the officers do. So what I say to you, Mr. Smith, is this: either put up or shut up. Give us the information so we can help these people, or don't spread any further lies. No more. You've said enough. You now have a duty to provide that information, And our officers will be more than willing to take that information off you if that is correct. I'm drawing a line under that now. I think that needs to be said. Councillor Condacor, do you wish to speak as a non-cabinet member?
Of course I do, Chair. Just a couple things. In this report on page 69, it talks about the £440,000 deficit on parking. This is a long-standing issue, and I keep asking, can we do more for the car parks that are being used for displacements from Abbey Street, like Victoria Street, to try and improve the environment around there and get signage and lighting improved and some of the bushes cut back? Because I think some of this deficit we have on parking is partly down to us losing possible trade. And secondly, there's the issue of all the buildings we're demolishing and all this transforming Nuneaton, which is having a massive effect on footfall as we're getting less businesses in the town. The second point I wanted to raise is the building back better, as you call it, which I call destroying things, demolishing things, delivery plan. We are now abandoning our 10%/20% vehicle fleet electric target. Clearly on page 78, we had a very weak target that when we replaced vehicles, they were going to have 10% in the housing and 20% in the general stock as electric. We are now abandoning that and consigning this council to diesel for the next decade probably. And finally, there's lots of stuff about the project's progress, like Bridge to Living, which you have got a funding gap on. Can we please get some discussion of how we scale back some of these vanity projects, which are effectively demolishing businesses, to make them slightly smaller? And it mentions the flood alleviation scheme in the same bit. Surely a Bridge to Living scheme could be scaled back, give more room for the river to expand, and actually take less businesses out of use. And finally on that, the DWP, Department of Work and Pensions, we still need clarity on whether they're actually willing to give up the site for our Bridge to Living scheme. And we just don't have any dialogue on that in this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. We've heard this time and time again, but I still remain disappointed that there is a lack of ambition for the regeneration of Nuneaton Town Centre, and indeed Bedworth Town Centre, come to think of that in some respects. Councillor Condacor has had a number of these answers, but in direct answer to the vehicle fleet, that is subject to a report on pink paper later. But what I would say is this: we have a duty to ensure that when we spend public money, it is spent wisely and efficiently and effectively. At the moment, if we were to go all electric or even partially electric, the infrastructure and the technology simply isn't there to justify it at this moment in time. What we have to do is ensure service delivery. That means, no, you've had your say, Councillor Condacor, that means that for the time being, diesel is the most effective method for this council's operations, given the amount of usage that our vehicles use. And if you look at our refuse lorries, for example, I think you told me once they're like 3 miles per gallon, 4 miles per gallon. That would require a tremendous amount of electricity and recharging, and we would need additional capacity to deal with the recharging, which we simply can't afford. If we've got a vehicle off the road, we need to backfill it with something to keep service delivery going. That would incur more money that Councillor Croft has already said we don't have. So I think we are being responsible, we are being prudent, and we are maintaining the most efficient and effective service that we can. So I'm happy with where we're going on that front, because residents want their bins emptied. They don't want us indulging in some kind of ideological fantasy. No, Councillor Condacor, you specifically mentioned we'd abandoned or alleged that we had abandoned the diesel target. I have given you a perfectly reasonable and rational explanation as to why at this moment in time that simply isn't possible. So we have the recommendations to accept the report before us. Does anyone wish to come back in before we go to the vote? No? Okay. Anything from officers? No? Okay, we'll move to the vote on the recommendations or show. Okay, thank you very much. That is carried. That moves us on to agenda item number 12, which is recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Panel. There is a recommendation from the Finance and Public Services OSP on the 17th of November, which is to endorse the decision of Cabinet on the 12th of October. And I think that is just for noting. Nothing else? Just Cabinet notes that? Can you speak on that item?
Yes, just note. It's up to you, Chair. It's your discretion.
It's not a substantive item, it's just noting a decision which has already been made. So, you should know by now, Councillor Condacall, there are actually no questions at Cabinet. We're just noting what happened at Overview and Scrutiny. So that moves us on to agenda item number 13. Any other items? I'm not aware of any which have been brought to my attention. No. So that moves us to agenda item number 14, which is exclusion of the public and press. The resolution is under the relevant provisions of the Local Government Act 1972 that we exclude the public and press for the reasons specified. I will move that from the Chair. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Croft and Councillor Golby thirds it. Thank you very much. All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you very much, Claire. Can we end the live stream, please?